challenges President Joe Biden faces in our current information environment and a Donald Trump media environment in particular is how to communicate just how much this administration, Democrats, and Congress have actually gotten done. It's been a lot. For example, the last 2 years have been the most productive years for U.S. climate efforts ever. We are still not on trajectory to meet our Paris climate targets, but for the first time, it actually seems like we have a shot at making it, almost entirely thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, passed without a single Republican vote. One of the people who first championed the early version of the climate plan as the Green New Deal is Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat in New York, and she joins me now. Congresswoman, it's great to have you on. You know, one of the things that I encounter, I think, particularly in social media-dominated spaces that where most sort of people under 30 get their news, is there's like a kind of really intense doomerism and kind of negativity that just sort of comes with the media, right? More than anything. But I think it shapes people's views of politics. And when I tell people that like emissions are setting all-time lows, like solar deployment setting all-time highs, like people don't know that we've actually kind of had a pretty good few years on climate stuff.
Yeah, it seems like it almost feels like when you remind folks of that, they think you're being the buzzkill for the buzzkills. But it is important for us to communicate that we are winning. And this isn't just about a political context. This isn't even about cheerleading the president, although his leadership and willingness to work and make climate a priority is important to note. But this is really about a story of people's movements winning. This is about frontline activists winning. This is about young people, you know, like Sunrise Movement, bird dogging senators, and making this issue front and center and completely politically unforgettable and politically urgent that we pass the largest U.S. federal climate investment in American history. And that has translated already to nearly 250,000 jobs that have already been created, of 9 million jobs that are estimated to be created in the next several years.
I got to ask you about just the Hill the last few days, because it really has been crazy and weird. And just what you make of the Mayorkas impeachment and the fact that they're you know, it's the first attempt to impeach a cabinet secretary in 150 years, and they miscounted the votes, and they're going to try again on Tuesday. What do you think about it?
I mean, let's just call a spade here. Republicans are dealing with not their first choice speaker, not their second choice speaker, not their third choice speaker. They're dealing with the speaker that they could get and that they could agree on. And that means an individual that does not have experience in party leadership, that is a relative newcomer when it comes to the tenure of member that you're used to seeing when they typically get the speaker's gavel. And that means that the experience in vote counting is not quite up to the standard that we usually see in a speaker's. You're also dealing with the fact that this is an impeachment without merit. Secretary Mayorkas has demonstrated there is absolutely no evidence for an impeachable offense. It is completely politicized. It imperils the Republicans' own swing district members to force a vote on something so clearly craven and without merit.
There's no other way to call this a puke fest by AOC in conjunction with Chris Hayes, the pseudo left person, most left person in corporate media. But this is the issue with social democracy. This is the issue with social democrats. This is the issue with the idea that the working class can team up or facilitate its liberation, facilitate its goals through one half of the uniparty is absurd. Because you have to play this game where you're given the window or the opportunity, say all of your most left shit, say all the stuff you want, you know, all your policy beliefs, you know, this is Nancy Pelosi talking to him, Joe Biden. Say all of that shit, not in an election year. You have a long leash. Go do all of that. Go tweet all kind of radical shit. as long as when it's time for the election year, you come through for us. You got that, AOC? And that's exactly what you're seeing, as if it's Voltron forming. I don't know if any of you have noticed, all of the professional managerial class left, otherwise known as the Bernie Sanders industrial complex, all in unison are now pushing Joe Biden, are now pushing the lesser of two evils in the midst of a genocide. Can you imagine somebody to make a meme like that, where there's, you know, some sort of animal, like the original meme of a dog sitting in a burning house, but there's a there's a meme of a genocide going on, and then AOC's in the middle like a ref, got Joe Biden on one side and Donald Trump on the other side, saying lesser of two evils in the middle of a genocide, as she's in Gaza, as the three of them are in Gaza. That's the ridiculousness of social democracy. In order to not be completely annihilated, obliterated, whatever word you want to use, like a Ralph Nader, you have to make a deal. Okay, I'll support a little bit of war crimes and imperialism as long as I'm able to project about these policies. Because remember, they're not materially doing anything about any of the policies. When the last time you've seen them tweet about Medicare for all, and it's not an election coming up? I remember last year, midterms, or 2 years ago, midterms, right about 6 weeks before midterms, all of a sudden, in unison, tweeting about Medicare for all. That was the last time where I remember where there was a large amount of them tweeting all at the same time. But we're going to be getting back to this video in just a second. I want to go to the article version of this video and read a little bit of that, and then come back to the video to finish out the video. So let's read this article here. The segment is actually titled right after this article. I'll read the sub-headline, which is above the headline this time, which is kind of unusual. As Biden adopts Trump's anti-immigration or immigrant program in attempt to secure billions for war, AOC praises Biden for his leadership in MSNBC interview. Now, needless to say, all of the things that she said about Joe Biden, let me see if I have those saved. All those things she said about Joe Biden, I may have them actually. I'm sorry, he said, that is Chris Hayes said about Joe Biden, is in particular about the Sunrise Movement and how this was some sort of the supposed gains that he was describing was because of you guys. This is the way of trying to get you involved. But see, what we got this far is because of you. So why don't you help us get even further, even though you haven't went anywhere in this car, figuratively speaking. But as I recall, the Sunrise Movement is pretty terrible. Actually, let me bring up this other receipt before we get to that, back to that article, because I want to address the Sunrise Movement part here. Here's the sunrise. Here's a couple of tweets about the Sunrise Movement. I'll read just this one. It says, this is Citizens Uprising. This is back in 2020. Okay. And I think this is right around the time when they endorsed Joe Biden. I unfollowed Sunrise Movement after the Moors stuff. That's a different story. But these kids have sold out. Sad, but not unheard of. Start out to make a change and turned establishment when they decided to accept the big checks. They all claim it won't change them. They don't even see it until it's too late. And we see it now. This is 4 years ago when they endorsed him, and 4 years later, Willow Project later, fake climate bill known as the IRA later. We see who the Sunrise Movement has become, but then they were just quote tweeting this other tweet here. It says, breaking: Sunrise Movement PAC took $500,000 from one of the largest dark money groups in the country. The Democracy Alliance funded 16. I'm sorry, let me open this all up. Oops. Oh, here it goes. It's a new thing that Twitter does. When you click on it, it moves it to the side. It says 1630 spent 11.5 million in June bankrolling pro-Biden super PAC like Priorities USA. And again, the name of the PAC is the Democracy Alliance Funded 1630 Fund. That's why they reference it here as 1630. That's the Sunrise Movement. So now let's get back to the article, and then, oops, not that one, this one. The article, and then the back to the video to finish out the video. Oh, here's another headline, actually. The IRA. This is from the Black Agenda Report. We covered this in a segment. I can't remember what it's called, but you would have to just search it on YouTube. You'll find it. Why the Inflation Reduction Act is less a climate bill and more a poison pill for Black and Indigenous communities and movements. Actually, let's read a little bit. This happens to be August 2022, which happens to be 2 years in after that last tweet I read to you. That was August 2020. This is August 2022, 2 years later. So let's read a little bit. I'm going to scroll down. Here we go. To me, is a fair inquiry. If a Republican introduced a piece of legislation that included up to 6 million acres of oil and gas leasing in the Gulf of Mexico, dedicated billions of dollars to unproven false climate solutions like so-called carbon capture and sequestration, extended the life of aging nuclear power plants, allowed for increased mining of uranium, and tied it to the commitment to ratify a separate rubber stamp American Petroleum Institute, that's API, side deal that would deregulate landmark environmental laws like the National Environmental Policy Act, as well as the Clean Air Act, which has both acted as a vanguard for historically marginalized environmental justice communities, would we still refer to it as a historic climate bill? So if a Republican bought a bill known as the IRA that had all of this stuff that this article just described, will we be calling this a historic climate bill? Seems bizarre. If you want to check out this article, Black Agenda Report, just Google Black Agenda Report, why the Inflation Reduction Act is a lie. Is less a climate bill. That's all you have. That's enough, and it'll bring up the right article. So now let's get back to the article now about AOC, just to sort of debunk what they were saying about Joe Biden being all this great guy on climate. It's absurd. The Willow Project, I forget the name of the other project that Joe Manchin had. It's something mountain in it. Mountain Project. I forget the first word of it. Something Mountain Project. He's awful. Anyway, let's read some of this. This is by Jacob Cross over at the World Socialist website. Let's read all of this in an attempt to hoodwink young and left-leaning workers and young youth into supporting President Joe Biden's fledgling presidential campaign, New York representative and Democratic Socialist of America member, AOC conducted a fawning interview on February 7th with MSNBC's Chris Hayes. Now, understand, I'm going to pause here for those listening. This is not the article. This is me speaking. This is what this is, because you might be thinking, what is the purpose of this? Why are you coming on? It's because they see what's happening with young voters. They see the polls with young voters. So they pause something about the natural gas. I can't remember what it is. Somebody in the comments remind me. They just pause something. That's for the youth also. They're going to restart that right after the election if he's elected, by the way. But this is also meant to capture those who are disaffected, those youth who are disaffected by the genocide that is being supported by Joe Biden. Let's read on. In the interview, AOC praised Biden's alleged leadership on climate while remaining silent on his embrace of Trump's anti-immigrant border policies in order to secure Republican votes for a massive war bill. Now, I have yet this story I've been wanting to cover, the immigration bill, even though it's over. Like, it is such a bizarre thing to see Democrats on going on a PR tour for a so-called immigration bill. This is really a war funding bill that they've renamed an immigration bill because people don't want to fund Ukraine. When $60 billion in the bill goes to Ukraine, sorry, that's not a border bill. That's a war funding bill that has been called a border bill. But as this article points out, the Democrats was wholly willing to sell out longstanding sort of policy beliefs on the border in order to get temporary war funding. And they were pushing it. They were saying, hey, guys, this is what they're doing. This thing that we hate, this pile of shit that we hate, but you say you love Republicans. We made it just for you. Why aren't you taking it? Take it, please. Take it. Why are you doing that if you're a Democrat and you're a liberal media who claim you're against these things? But that's what they were doing, and it was just bizarre to see. But get back to the article. Biden's unwavering support for the Israeli military campaign in Gaza, which has resulted in some 150,000 Palestinians killed, missing, and injured as of February 6th, according to Euromed Monitor, has led to collapse in his approval rating and poll numbers. This is especially true among young people and social media users who have witnessed Israeli war crimes for over 4 months. AOC interview unofficial campaign. I love how they call it that. AOC's unofficial campaign advertisement took place less than 48 hours after Biden delivered a public address from the White House in which he demanded Congress pass a $118 billion war anti-immigration package. Let me pause here for those that's listening. Now, Chris in the interview brings up climate, and the focus is trying to push climate. What's the number one polluter of climate on the planet? The military-industrial complex. So $118 billion going to the military-industrial complex to pollute more. Doesn't that kind of wipe out any of the so-called climate gains through this presidency? But they're not going to say that in their propaganda segment that Chris Hayes and AOC that I'm covering here. But let's continue with the article. We're right here. The overriding concern of Biden, Democrats, and many Republicans is the proxy war against Russia in Ukraine, large sections of the American ruling class fear the collapse of their puppet government in Kyiv if over 60 billion in military aid is not appropriated soon. And we're sort of seeing that happening. Didn't Zelensky just got rid of defense minister, somebody in the defense ministry, either the top guy or somebody high ranking? Corruption. They've embezzled millions of dollars. Now, laundered. The United States have laundered billions from us, and then Zelensky and his buddies in the government has laundered millions, I should say. But continuing back with the article, the bill also contains $14 billion for the ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza and billions to further militarize Taiwan. Now think about that. On two fronts that social democrats are virtue signaling, they're selling you out through the back door on two fronts. We got Israel and we got climate. They're selling you out on Israel. Oh, we need to help. We're for the Palestinians. Stop doing this. Ceasefire. Here's 14 billion, Israel. Here's 14 billion. So wait a minute. You're saying, and Joe Biden just said this in a news conference. Their approach in Gaza is over the top. So you're giving $14 billion to somebody you're describing as over the top? That's social democracy. That's what the progressive Democrats have chosen to sign up for. Back to the article, not to mention Taiwan, who they briefly mentioned in this article. In order to secure Republican support for the package, it all contains sweeping attacks on immigrants. This included $20 billion to the border police and to rewriting of asylum laws, making it drastically harder for millions to immigrate to the U.S. So they go up and so I'm pausing here. So the United States empire go and fuck up other countries. Those people are forced to come to this country with any sort of hope or inspiration to survive or give a better life to their kids, and they're saying, we're gonna cut those asylum laws. We're gonna cut the ability for you to claim asylum from the countries we're destroying. We're gonna completely shut that door. And the Democrats are like, okay, as long as we get money for Ukraine. Did I read this last part here? Yeah. Let's continue. None of this was raised by AOC or Hayes. Instead, making clear the purpose of the segment, the interview began with a chyron that read the Biden success story. And if you didn't see that, you'll see it when I put the video back up. A photo of a smiling Biden was displayed behind Hayes, accompanied by the phrase, "so much win." Do not vomit as you watch this, please. Just disgusting. Earning his salary as a corporate lapdog for the Democratic Party, Hayes began the interview lamenting that, quote, young people and, quote, many under 30 in social media dominated spaces had an intense doomerism and kind of negativity. That sounds like the description of a person who's doing very well in the midst of a genocide. Doomerism sounds like a word that a person would use who's part of the professional managerial class and who has no connection to the struggles of the working class here on this soil. And certainly the Palestinians wouldn't call what's happening to them doomerism. But social democrats. Hayes claimed that people did not know that we're actually had a few good years on climate stuff. Ocasio-Cortez agrees, saying that when you remind folks that they think you are being a buzzkill for the buzzkills. You like that joke? doomerism, people who are real negative online. Sorry that we're seeing beheaded babies because of bombs dropped on them, and we're just describing what we're seeing. Can you imagine calling a genocide doomerism? Can you imagine ramping up for war against China doomerism? What does that say about the person speaking? That's saying they know they're going to be all right through police brutality, through suppression of wages, through the taking of private rights, through militarism, through the dropping of bombs. They know they're going to be fine. So when you are complaining about all of those things, you're being a doomerist to them. That's doomerism because they're at brunch. Why are you bringing up dead babies right now? I'm trying to have a margarita. I must say, since doing this work, I've grown to I've grown to dislike the professional managerial class more and more. That's one thing I clearly recognize that I did not have before. But let's continue. As a matter of fact, under capitalism, climate change continues to worsen, as evident currently by the massive fires in Chile and the atmospheric rivers along the West Coast, leaving no doubt to her purpose in conducting the interview. AOC said, quote, "This isn't even about cheerleading the president, although his leadership and willingness to work and make climate a priority is a important note to note." That's a bold-faced lie. His leadership and willingness to work and make climate a priority is important to note. She ought to be ashamed of herself to let those words come out of her mouth. That is absolutely ridiculous. That is absolutely absurd to say something as ridiculous as that. All right, I'm tired of reading. Let's get back to the interview now and listen. What I like about the article, it does add a lot more meat than just the visual talking, just the quotes. Give the backstory of how can you be talking about this when this is the problem with climate change, or how can you be talking about this as he's doing this to get more war funding? He's selling out the asylum policy, which is already not even effective. So I'm going to rewind it just to remind a couple of things they said, and then we're going to continue with the interview. We're at the 3-minute mark. It's an 8-minute interview.
Could get, and that they could agree on. And that means an individual that does not have experience in party leadership, that is a relative newcomer when it comes to the tenure of member that you're used to seeing when they typically get the speaker's gavel. And that means that the experience in vote counting is not quite up to the standard that we usually see in a speaker's. You're also dealing.
You understand what she's saying here? Now, you tell me, how can she be a representative of the working class when she's describing the stranglehold that Nancy Pelosi had on quote unquote democracy in her caucus? She's describing that as a good thing. And she's describing forcing a vote on Kevin McCarthy as speaker a bad thing. On what planet would a socialist be making this argument? Astonishing. I got to hear that. I got to hear that again. I'm sorry that I rewinded this twice, but I got to hear that again.
Speaker that they could get.
And wait, sorry. Let me go back some more so you can hear the complete story of this speaker part.
Slated already to nearly 250,000 jobs that have already been created, of 9 million jobs that are estimated to be created in the next several years.
I got to ask you about just the Hill the last few days, because it really has been crazy and weird. And just what you make of the Mayorkas impeachment and the fact that You know, it's the first attempt to impeach a cabinet secretary in 150 years, and they miscounted the votes, and they're going to try again on Tuesday. What do you think about it?
I mean, let's just call a spade here. Republicans are dealing with not their first choice speaker, not their second choice speaker, not their third choice speaker.
Fair.
So was Pelosi your first choice speaker? AOC? AOC is saying here, if I'm not mistaken, that Nancy Pelosi was her first choice. The Democrats got her first choice. Not even Nancy Pelosi. How about Hakeem Jeffries? And think about what she's describing. She's describing democracy and the process of democracy as being chaotic and foolery. That's the socialists.
I mean, let's just call a spade here. Republicans are dealing with not their first choice speaker, not their second choice speaker, not their third choice speaker. They're dealing with the speaker that they could get and that they could agree on. And that means an individual that does not have experience in party leadership.
Like Nancy Pelosi.
That is a relative newcomer when it comes to the tenure of member that you're used to seeing when.
You mean like Nancy Pelosi? You mean the geriatric leadership? Is that what you mean?
When they typically get the speaker's gavel. And that means that the experience in vote counting is not quite up to.
The experience in vote counting. You mean how Nancy Pelosi had you on the floor of the Senate crying? Is that what you're calling vote counting, AOC? Let's try to stay focused.
To the standard that we usually see in a speaker's. You're also dealing with the fact that this is an impeachment without merit. Secretary Mayorkas has demonstrated there is absolutely no evidence for an impeachable offense. It is completely politicized. It imperils the Republicans' own swing district members to force a vote on something so clearly craven and without merit, that I think you see what happened last night, all of that coming together. And the fact that they think that Democrats owe it to Republicans to give them their counts, our attendance counts is laughable. It really speaks to the fact that you're working with people who are not used to being in this chamber.
Yeah, they were mad that Nildum told them that Al Green was going to become like wheeling back in scrubs from abdominal surgery. Like he should have.
This is so nauseating. This is so nauseating. Now, this is not, I'm not a fan of the Republican Party. I'm not a fan of Mike Johnson or any of the speakers. But understanding that this is a defense of Nancy Pelosi's leadership. This is a defense of Hakeem Jeffries' leadership. Who is AOC today? Who is this person? All right, I took a break. Now let's go back in for some more of this. I gotta take it in short spurts here.
Giving them a heads up on that.
And if you didn't expect Al Green to be doing that, then you don't know who Reverend and Representative Al Green is. He will do that.
He will do it, as demonstrated yesterday. It's a good point. I want to ask a question about something, the Congressional Budget Office. And you tweeted this because I've been maddened by the discussion of immigrants, which basically I feel like the entire discussion is they're coming to take your stuff. There's like only 7 slices of pizza in America, and everyone that comes is going to take one of those slices, and you're not going to have any. And the Congressional Budget Office basically said today, look, we're readjusting our projection of GDP growth up by $7 trillion. And also, we're reading the U.S. government money to reduce the deficit by $1 trillion because of immigration, higher net immigration. And you tweeted that being like, guys, we're not talking at all about the net positives immigrants bring to this country.
Absolutely. It is actually completely nonsensical that we do not talk about the enormous blessing, economic blessing that immigrants and immigration represents to the United States of America. And a lot of folks sometimes think that this is just a certain kind of immigrant, right? Like college educated or technical visas. All immigrants that we're seeing, this is the CBO estimate, immigration writ large is yielding enormous economic benefits to the United States. And let's bring this out even finer. If you are a caregiver, if you are a baby boomer, if you are someone that cares for someone who is aging, we currently do not have the economic or social structural capacity to take care of our seniors. And we will increasingly not have that if we, quote unquote, lock up our border and shut down.
Do you understand what AOC is saying here? AOC is saying we're going to have a lowest paid exploited worker shortage. She's saying we need to keep the border open so we can continue to have the flow of low-paid, most exploited worker. There's no way a person who calls themselves a leftist 4 years ago is still following this person. The people who are following this person are liberals. The liberals that hated her when people on the left had more of an affinity for her, like 4 years ago, those people that hated her 4 years ago have now come on to like her because how she sold out. That's who follows her. That's why her approval rating is lower than Kamala Harris. Because those are the people who believed in her 4 years ago who now see that she's a complete sellout. So she's selling out climate, she's selling out labor, and now we can include immigrants. What socialists would think that it's a positive point to make about keeping immigration? What socialists would make it as a positive point to keep immigration, to say then we won't have exploited workers? Because if you understand what she says we'll have a shortage. We have people that can work it, but you know the people who take care of those people, the people in these caretakers, these are some of the lowest paid people for the work that they're doing. Oh, God, like you're right. This is boomers mostly falling for her. You know, boomers that want to feel like, oh no, I'm hip. I'm not old. Look, I like AOC. She's cool, man. Let's get back to the video.
Shut down immigration. In fact, the thing that has distinguished U.S. economic performance from other countries like Japan or other, developed economies is the fact that our pro-immigration policies actually allow us to continue in our economic growth, whereas similar countries with anti or more kind of closed border policies experience economic stagnation when they submit themselves to this xenophobic kind of border panic narrative that Fox News, frankly, seeks to peddle and instill in so many people.
quickly in the last 20 seconds, I know you are a no on the supplemental for Israel, barring some sort of strings attached on that aid. You said that we're seeing in Gaza slaughter on a speech yesterday on the floor. How many Democrats are in that position as you? Do you have? Is there a rough count of how many no's there are in the caucus?
Do you understand? This is the bone. This is the thank you. You know, she doesn't have a book. Usually, come and promote your book. Then I get to answer these questions. She doesn't have her book. So it's let me be Captain Save the AOC and help salvage your credibility by projecting to the world that you're a no vote on this supplemental with no strings attached. What does that do? What's that do? You already sent the money. It's truly disgusting. I'm gonna read just a little bit more of the article because it addresses one more thing I want to make sure I include here, and then we're gonna get to the main story, which is they want Joe Biden gone, or saying on camera this guy needs to go. So back to the article here. For the duration of nearly 8-minute interview, AOC did not find it important to note Biden's leadership or willingness to work with his Republican colleagues to pass the border crackdown war bill. Nor did she bring up Biden's leadership when it came to blocking UN ceasefire resolutions, defunding UNRWA, or bypassing Congress to provide weapons to the genocidal Zionist regime. Turning to the Republican impeachment drive against Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas, AOC said nothing about the fascistic great replacement theory politics that undergirds the Republican Party. Instead, she made light of the fact that Speaker Mike Johnson was not the Republicans' first choice for speaker and therefore do not have experience in party leadership. Near the end of the interview, she mentioned that Fox News peddled xenophobic border panic narratives, but she remained silent on Biden using similar language, including promising to shut down the border because it was overwhelmed. In the last minute of the interview, the topic of Gaza was finally broached. With Hayes asking AOC how many Democrats she thought would vote against a standalone Israeli aid package and that did not include oversight and humanitarian aid. AOC refused to give an answer, but instead claimed that the ceasefire protests were working. And I didn't play it to the end. She does say that. She said something like keep doing the protest is working, or something maybe not keep doing the protest, not that strong, but she does say it's working. In reality, Democrats have ignored demands for a ceasefire for over 120 days, while at the same time slandering anti-genocide protesters, including hundreds of thousands of students, as anti-Semites. Leading Democrats such as former Speaker Nancy Pelosi have slandered protesters as agents of Putin and the Chinese Communist Party and called for the FBI to investigate demonstrators. That's the same speaker that she was praising. That's Mama Bear. AOC said nothing about Pelosi smearing protesters. Instead, she nonsensically claimed that grassroots activism around a bilateral ceasefire is working and that there are far more members than perhaps may be publicly visible that have a lot of trepidation around voting for a package that contains no humanitarian aid. Well, isn't that something? They have trepidation in the silence. That is the epitome of social democracy and why we'll never gain anything using social democracy, which is what progressive Democrats are. They're social Democrats. Don't let them tell you otherwise. They're not socialists. But that is the headline, and that is the story, or the first story, I should say. And but let me say this last part on this. It feels like, or not, it feels like the riding the fence for AOC, trying to appear still in the left camp, while still shielding for Biden secretly, it has switched now. She is now publicly for Biden, and if she's still part of the left, it must be in secret, because that's no longer public. So, and that is my takeaway from this person we know as AOC.